Hello and welcome to Fresh Faced Comics, the comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader guides his friend through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Joey Morgan, the aforementioned lifelong reader. With me is Jacob Lickletter, the aforementioned newbie.
You got through it that time.
I did. Fuck you, Jake. I don't know why. I wanted to take it like four times.
That was like the fourth attempt from Joey to do the intro. You don't know why.
Fuck you. All right. So today we are talking about Batman Year One, which I'm very excited to talk about. But before we get into any of that, I just want to say this is the first episode that we're recording since we got the podcast up on Spotify. So you could go listen to the podcast on Spotify right now. You could listen to it on Anchor, and of course there is the YouTube option here. If you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or Anchor, please consider subscribing to Blood Donut Studios. We're the guys that make the podcast and we produce it. So just knowing that the support is there, even if you're not going to watch it on YouTube, just knowing that the support is there would be nice. So just very excited about that. Hoping to bring the podcast to a couple other platforms that people typically listen to in the near future. So be on the lookout for that.
Listening, because YouTube's not fun for that.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're one of the people that falls for the scam of YouTube music. So whatever. So there's that, and I think that about covers it, right? Anything else we had to say before we get into this?
I don't think so. Actually,
all right.
A quick thanks for making the first two episodes so great. It's honestly still, I'm glad the momentum is keeping up, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, it's been great to have all the support on the first two episodes. I think as of the time of recording this, the first episode's almost at 200 views on YouTube, and the second episode is well over 100. So very nice, very nice to see that. Nice to see the support there. Also something to keep in mind going forward: you don't have to listen to every episode. You don't have to listen to these episodes sequentially. I think that was fairly obvious, but just the drop in views kind of indicated that people may have thought otherwise. But yeah, so. In case you were worried about that, don't worry. We're not going to be constantly referencing the other episodes that we've done. So any episode you could just jump right into. You can recommend any episode. If your friend likes a specific story that we're covering, you could recommend that episode of the podcast to him or her or them, whatever you want. And it'll all be there. So yeah, I think that about covers it now. Let's get into your first Frank Miller comic, Batman Year One. Your first baby's first Frank Miller comic.
Frank Miller, and it's definitely a Frank Miller.
It is. Yes, it is. So what did you know about Frank Miller before going into this?
I knew he was batshit insane.
You were correct.
I vaguely knew there were two Frank Miller comics that I kind of knew about, but for his batshit insanity before going in. That would be All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, and then Holy Terror. So if you listen to the last episode when we revealed what this episode was going to be, I let out a very audible fuck.
It's true. which let me know that we would be in for a very interesting read for today's episode. I think. So of course, knowing what everyone knows about Frank Miller nowadays is that he's absolutely fucking insane. This was a time when Frank Miller was actually a revered author, believe it or not. I mean, he still is. To say that Frank Miller doesn't still have a legacy nowadays isn't entirely fair. But to say that
it was just this, it would be a lot better.
This was a Frank Miller coming off the high of writing one of the most successful Batman comics of all time in The Dark Knight Returns. So, and he still keeps that high, I would say. He's still there. It's just everything else. And also I hear his Daredevil run's good, but I've not read that. So, whatever. But yeah, so we decided to do Year One for this. This is actually one of the good Frank Miller comics. Let's get into non-spoilers. What did you make of Year One when you started to read it?
Well, immediately starting, it took me a while to actually get into it. I guess for those who may not know, Year One is 4 issues. It is Batman 404, 405, 406, and 407.
This would be the first thing. This would be the first take on sort of quote unquote rebooting Batman at the time. This is the first thing like that happened with the big event that happened with Batman post Crisis on Infinite Earths. The thing that sort of the event that sort of reset the DC universe as we know it today for the most part. So Frank Miller was the guy chosen to sort of guide the way through Batman, because Batman didn't really need an overhaul on his backstory, just needed an updating of it, if that makes sense. So so I'm curious, what did you make of Batman's backstory? I mean, obviously you're fairly familiar with it, given just cultural osmosis, with
Yeah.
the shit ton of other Batman content out there.
Um, Miller, for the backstory of Bruce and why he does what he does, especially in the first issue, like the back half of the first issue was brilliant.
Hmm.
Basically, from the point after Bruce goes out after his first night to the end of that issue is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Perfect storytelling. Um,
Because
his
he isn't
flash.
because he isn't Batman at first. Like he doesn't like go out fighting crime and he has the full bat suit and everything. He just wants to go out and fight crime to avenge his parents' deaths. And he very quickly realizes that it isn't quite gonna work if he just goes out there, puts on a very, very thinly veiled disguise. Just in this case being like just like a fake scar on his face and a skull cap. That's about it. Um, it is so. The first issue is a lot about like Bruce finding his identity and who he needs to be in order to accomplish his goal as um as
And
Gotham's
I'll,
savior.
and I'll have
So
more to say about that when we get to spoiler territory. Um, but that, and I don't want to spoil actually sort of the last bits of this first issue here. I
yeah,
will
yeah.
say you do get the flashback to the death of Thompson Martha Wayne. That's not really a spoiler. That's
What? Wait! Bruce Wayne's parents are dead. What?
yeah, no. And I love that it's done with no dialogue. Um,
Yeah.
it's done with no dialogue. It's done on a page.
Hmm.
Uh, and
So so another big part of this book, I mean, yeah, arguably just most of the book is the perspective of Jim Gordon, who has just
yes,
recently moved to Gotham City. What did
yes,
you
and
make of him?
I think this is more a Jim Gordon book than a Batman book, if I'm being honest. Um,
I agree. I
this
agree.
this is this is very much Batman as a sort of quasi mythic figure, just sort of appearing. Um, and this is really just the story. This is really the story of Jim Gordon taking on the corrupt Gotham City Police Department. Um,
Hmm.
and that's where year one, outside of the very big bit at the end of issue one, and a couple of other things, that's where it really shines. Um,
Hmm.
is getting to see how one man through a corrupt system can essentially change that system.
Hmm.
Uh,
Something that seems to be sort of uh I guess not misconstrued, but something that is very commonly looked over with Jim Gordon as a character is that Jim Gordon, he's obviously he's the guy that's going to come into Gotham City. He's going to clean up the police force. He's going to do it his way. But Jim Gordon also isn't a perfect man, and Frank Miller takes a lot of time to focus on that, to say that yeah, Jim Gordon is still just like a person like the rest of us. He still has the same sort of faults as a lot of people would in this situation. Um, Even right down, not there's one aspect of the plot that we'll talk about more when we get into spoilers that really exemplifies this, but even right down to like some of his early inner monologue where he's talking about what he wants to do coming into the city, things like he desperately hopes that his wife isn't actually pregnant so that he doesn't have to raise a kid in Gotham. Something like watching his corrupt cop that he's paired up with just beating a kid on the side of the street and just letting it go because Gordon doesn't want to get on the bad side of the GCPD early on. It's stuff like that where like, yeah, Gordon's a good guy. Gordon is the closest we have to a white knight in this story, but he still has his faults, and those are not simply glossed over.
no, they're not, and I think that's also important. I think it's also important that Miller doesn't really include supervillains here. Um, is
No.
that every character is just basically a person, bar bar one appearance that we'll talk about. We will talk about that.
Your favorite appearance in the book, as I gather. Okay, well, I mean, we can talk about like just who the character is. I mean, we won't say anything much about this character, but it is.
So
I did find
Kyle's here.
Selena Kyle does appear. I did find it quite funny when I was going to rewatch the animated movie for this. After I was done reading the comic, I went to rewatch the animated movie, and I pulled it up on HBO Max. I like your point about there being no supervillains because there's no big like tagline to sell the movie on. So with the description of the HBO Max description of Batman Year One is that they play it up almost like it's a fight between Batman and Catwoman throughout the entire movie, and that like she's the main villain of it because there's no supervillain to speak on in this book. Not really. The closest we get is Catwoman.
This isn't a book with like. It's not even a book with like a tight plot. It's not your standard structure. It's essentially glimpses throughout the first year of Bruce Wayne as Batman.
Yeah.
And when it's focusing on Bruce and Gordon and writing parallels, that's where it excels. That is where this book excels. Like from the first, like even like the opening page, despite me not enjoying. I don't want to say not enjoying because I didn't dislike the first issue. It just took a while for me to get into it.
I got that feeling, like me, I guess, because I was rereading it this time around. Obviously, I knew what I was getting into. I guess it can be like a little harder to ease into, especially when we have such a modern view of Batman. And given the two comics that I had started you off before, it does sort of paint a very different picture, doesn't it? But this is really like where it begins. This is where we're coming from, and I guess it could be a bit harder to get a grasp on if you're just like jumping right into it after being like fairly familiar with the Batman mythos already.
Also, just the weird pacing. Like the first issue especially, I don't think does its. I'd argue the first issue rushes more than the other three to get through that first 3 months. So like each issue is basically 3 months of the year. And I think the first issue almost rushes things after you get past like that first day. Like the first day is really good. It's a really good introduction to our basically our actually our four major players of the book, being Bruce, Gordon, Commissioner Loeb, and then Detective Flass, who is Gordon's partner. And then it just kind of it feels like it ramps fairly quickly into gear.
I'm not sure if I quite agree with that assessment though, because there's I think there's purposely a lot of jumping around in the first issue because it is playing it like you don't know these characters very well already. It's saying like here's some flashes and quick glimpses into these people's lives. We're gonna delve more into that later, and it's not trying to say like it's not giving you like a perfect grasp on these characters right at the start. Because yeah, if you're throwing a bunch of characters your way right at the beginning of a normal story, if you don't know any of these people before reading the book, which is the stance that Frank Miller takes when writing it. Then that's how you would actually view these people. You don't know much about them, so you're just getting like quick snippets of their lives before that.
And then I don't think it really. I just don't think it really settles until a moment near the end with Gordon.
That moment, yeah.
You know what moment I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But then at that point, I think Miller actually has a groove, and he sort of has an idea of because then it just feels more evenly paced throughout the rest of the issue and the other three issues, which is very very important.
Obviously, with the way we're talking about this, it's kind of hard to talk about a lot of the comic without spoiling things. So,
well, part of it this isn't really a comic with a whole lot of. It's not a singular plot thread.
Well, but also it's a very simple setup. It's like, okay, here it's the first year of Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. Bruce Wayne is here. He's going to become Batman. You're going to follow Jim Gordon as he goes into this very corrupt police force, and he's going to try to change things for the better. And that's the plot of it. It's a very simple thing to say non-spoiler, if that makes sense. And then so so I guess to start wrapping up the non-spoiler section, what did you think of the rest of it without giving anything away?
I actually really enjoyed the rest of it. Like each issue was better than the last. Um,
Hmm.
when we read these, I'm also reading them on Goodreads, and they have a 5-star rating system. Um, it was very very close near the end to me to getting this to that 5-star mark. It still kind of stays at the 4 because there are still a couple of things, especially near the end, and we'll talk about it in the spoiler section. But despite some criticisms, I'd recommend this book. But yeah, this
Hmm.
is definitely
I think a
a
lot. I
good
think a lot of
book.
people. A lot of people, yeah, would recommend this. I know I have a friend whose very first Batman comic was Year One, and he read it fairly recently. And then he went into a couple other things. It's designed to be a lot of people's first Batman comic, but by today's standards, I personally wouldn't recommend it as a lot of people's first Batman comic. Obviously, otherwise I would have started you on it. But I disagree with the assessment that it should be people's first Batman comic because it is Frank Miller. It comes on very, very strong and not necessarily in the best way at times. It's very,
If you know anything about Miller today, you can see the seeds of that. That Miller didn't come out of nowhere.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And obviously something to talk about more in spoilers. But I guess any final thoughts before we do move into spoilers?
Um, it's good if you. I'd say this actually would pair nicely after reading The Long Halloween.
Which is odd because Long Halloween was written specifically as a sequel to Year One.
Yeah. Um, I'd read them in reverse publication order like I did. I think that
I mean,
actually.
also to be fair, I think Long Halloween does require at least a certain grasp on the Batman mythos before going in. Like you should know who a lot of those villains are before going into the story. Um, have a decent idea of where a lot of the characters are going. Like Year One, you can actually just throw people into it and like have them know literally nothing about the Batman universe.
I also
Long
don't think
Halloween.
I don't think anyone's really going to know nothing about Batman. I think
I mean, you never know. You never know. I think it's
I think
it's
there's a fair amount of cultural osmosis
yeah,
going
yeah.
through.
So, but yeah, yeah, definitely recommend the book no matter what. Despite Jacob's apprehension, I still would highly recommend the book. It is just one of those essential Batman comics that I think everyone should that
I'd
I
say
think everyone
read
should at
it.
least give a shot at some point.
I'd say read it. It's important to read, and it's a great character study. Um, just
Mhm.
just just go in knowing
Specifically,
there are some
specifically,
problems.
specifically, if you're a Jim Gordon fan, like if you're this is the Jim Gordon book. Like Batman's on the cover, but no, this is Jim Gordon's story, and it's brilliant. So. I guess that about does it. This is actually, I think, our shortest non-spoiler section, oddly enough. So I guess, yeah. Let's get into spoilers and let's take the book scene by scene. So we open on January 4th in Bruce Wayne's first year coming back to Gotham and shortly before Batman's arrival. Bruce Wayne arrives. We have sort of his inner monologue played alongside Gordon, uh, and Gordon meets his
I
new
think at this
boss.
point we need to mention Todd Klein as the letterer. Uh, I think
Okay, I'm curious to hear the takes.
uh, no, this is a good take. I have nothing but praise for Klein's lettering. Um,
Oh, awesome.
I love that he gives Bruce this cursive.
Hmm.
Like all of Bruce's inner monologue is in this cursive. Um, yeah, even yeah. I think for the
I know
entire
what we had briefly spoken about that actually before
yeah,
recording, and you had mentioned that the cursive actually is a little hard to follow at times.
it's a
Um,
little hard to read, but it's a great idea.
it is. I like that, especially like as that distinction between their inner monologues. Like Gordon's inner monologue is written on like this like scratchy like post-it note paper, and it just looks like a normal guy would write it.
It's all bold and
Mhm,
mostly lowercase. Um,
mhm.
uh,
And Bruce Wayne would like purposely write in that like elegant cursive, despite his thought process not being that at all. I think it's just this really interesting contrast. It's really interesting. Uh, so we meet Jim Gordon's new boss here on the GCPD, Commissioner Gillian Loeb. What did you make of this character? I'm curious. Because were you familiar at all with Loeb's character, other than like a couple of adaptations of him?
not not
Because
really, but
because he's in the Nolan films. He dies in The Dark Knight, right?
right.
And
I
then
did.
have you played? And you said you played the Arkham games, right?
I played Asylum. I think I've beaten Asylum, and I don't know how far I got in City. I know I played City
Okay,
though.
because he's in Origins too, but I don't think you're familiar with that one,
I have
are you?
not played that. I have not
Okay,
played that one.
gotcha. Yeah. So I just really want to know what'd you think of him?
From his first panel, he's a slimy bastard.
Oh
Like
yeah, I love the way he's drawn.
it's this perfect. He's sort of like that fat old. He exudes he exudes corruption.
Yeah, yeah. He just gives out that energy of just like you can't touch me, and if you try to, you're gonna end up dead the next day, and no one's gonna know who killed you.
And one minor thing that I was just kept fixating on is he's unwrapping something in that first panel, and it's blue, and I can't tell what it is.
Well, wasn't it just like a mint? They made it like a mint in the movie, and I'm pretty sure that's what it's meant to be, isn't it?
I don't know. It's a mint in the movie. It's
I think
weird.
that's what it's meant to be.
Yeah, my brain jumps to just like why is it so blue?
Yeah, I guess. um, yeah, no, I get that. So Bruce arrives back home. We meet up with Alfred, get a brief scene there. Um, Gordon meets up with his partner, Arnold, right? Arnold's his first name, Arnold Flass,
Arnold Glass, also
who
a
is
slimy
just
bastard.
yeah, which is just the vibe you get from every single Gotham police officer, other than Gordon. Um, this is probably like one of the most interesting scenes in the comic, I think, because Flash just stops on the side of the street and starts beating this kid up. He like hits him against a garbage can,
I'm gonna
just
say
punches him in the face.
I think it's telling that that of the three kids that are there, he goes for the black
That he's
one.
yeah, oh, definitely. I think that's definitely intentional.
Like it,
Yeah, yeah,
even if it's not intentional, the script in Mazzucchelli, right? Mazzucchelli is how you pronounce the
yeah.
artist's name.
I believe so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's very
in
deliberate.
his
Yeah.
art, it's clear like he corrupt cop, um, prescient, still prescient for the modern day, and you have that sort of last great moment where it's uh, like it, to justify it's like he had this in his pocket,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
it's a
it's
cop.
just that's a comb. I love Gordon's inner monologue as Flash is beating on the kid, and just like watching how Flash fights, as he says for future reference. Love the setup of that where Gordon's gonna go later.
And
We get
I was gonna
just
say this is I think perhaps um, one of the big like flaws in Gordon's character in not intervening. Um, as
yeah,
well as
but I think also
it's not a good thing that he didn't intervene in letting a cop beat
no,
up this kid.
you get why, but it's that's sort of that's the Gotham City that Frank Miller sets up. It's that necessary evil, you know. Yeah, just oh, it hurts to see, but it really works. Um, then we cut to February 12th. We have all that inner monologue of Gordon hoping that his wife isn't pregnant paid off, and just a little line of Flash saying, "Hey, you have a kid on the way," and all of Gordon's worst fears are suddenly coming true. February 12th, Bruce's training. February 26th, Flass is complaining to Loeb about how Gordon just doesn't fit in. Gordon isn't going along with bribes from shady people. He's not fitting in with the GCPD, and he wants something to be done about
What's
that.
interesting is
And
you
I think,
already in this tiny scene, you already see Gordon having a positive effect.
yeah,
Just,
yeah, that, yeah,
just by the fact.
it's very minimal. It's very minimal. Like the only thing that Flass is complaining about here is that he didn't accept a bribe. But that's still a big moment. That's just like common practice for any Gotham City police officer at the time, and I think that's
And
a great
that
way.
is enough, and that is enough to get to them.
Yeah, the idea of that just scares them. I think that's really really interesting. So, cut to March 12th. Bruce decides to go
Right.
out for the first time.
And
Or so did I say 12th? I meant to say 11th.
it's like
I'm looking at the page.
what's interesting is his disguise. It's this very interesting. His disguise. He's clearly thought through what he's doing.
Mhm.
But somehow nowhere near enough.
Yeah. At the same time, the boys in blue of the GCPD are about to teach Gordon a lesson. Um, they just beat the living piss out of him, and Gordon just kind of has to take it in this moment. Um, just really showing that like just what kind of police force Gotham is. That same threat that we talked about that Loeb presents early on is fully in swing there, and they don't. What I think is interesting about that part is that they don't identify any of the people beating on him there, the bats.
Except for Flash.
You don't even see Flash though.
Yeah, you don't
They're
see
also
him. You just hear it from Gordon's inner monologue.
yeah. Um, it's
And then
yeah.
the next,
Oh man. So I'll let you take this next bit.
next bit. Okay. So I like this scene in theory.
Go ahead.
Oh, so we go to the red light district in um yeah in the east end of Gotham. We have Bruce just sort of wandering around, and he yeah, comes across a child prostitute.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Which which okay, uh, makes sense. Let's be
Makes
real.
sense.
Makes sense.
Let me get a little further in the scene. Then I can go on my issues with the way Frank Miller writes women in this book, especially.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And it's like, hmm, hmm.
Okay, so
Then we
so
get
okay,
we get this child pimp. Like, hey, hmm. And she's like, yeah. I don't like this, Joey. This is the bit that
I'm
I
aware
hate.
you don't like this. This is I yeah. It's not the most tasteful scene, but obviously it's not meant to be. So yeah, this child's pimp comes in, gets pissy at Bruce. He believes that Bruce is just another cop undercover. Bruce obviously proves him wrong. This mysterious woman watches from the top, who is named Selena.
It's Selena
We'll catch up with
Kyle.
her.
It's Selena
We'll,
Kyle.
we'll, we'll catch up with her later. In the meantime, Bruce starts beating on these guys over here, rightfully so. The child prostitute comes out and stabs his fucking leg. um, at which point Selena jumps down, decides to join in the fight, fights Bruce for a little bit. It's 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 a cool little moment. That's probably like one of the only moments in this that is very self-referential, isn't it? Like it's meant to be like, oh ha, you know Bruce Wayne, you know Selena Kyle, this is their first time meeting, and they don't even know it. Um, it's yeah, it's just one of those moments where it's like, okay, it's there, it's cool, it's nice, but then the police come in. Uh, Bruce just gets straight up shot. He starts bleeding out. He eventually escapes from the police um, by by strangling one of the officers, and the car rams into a truck. At which point everything lights on fire. He saves the two officers and leaves. Bruce makes his way out. He starts to drive away. We cut back to Gordon then, who is following Flass home. he just rams Flass off the side of the fucking road and tosses him a bat because he wants to give Flass a fighting chance. And this is one of my favorite scenes in like the whole comic. I'm curious to know what you thought of this moment.
Oh yeah, no, this is where the issue starts to get good.
It's a really good scene.
Because Miller's already done a good job of making you hate Flass.
Oh yeah, everything he does is just absolutely scummy. It's horrible.
And the cherry on top is he's wearing a high school Letterman's jacket.
Yeah.
Because this is a fucker who peaked in high school.
Yep.
And Gordon's very smart, and it's like he hurts him just enough to break the man's pride.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough to actually hurt him, because emotional scars are cut much deeper than physical scars.
Mm-hmm. My favorite little bit here at the end is when he leaves Flass naked in the woods and starts to drive away. Is he has this little like inner monologue where he says he'll never report it, not Flass. He'll make us some story that involves at least 10 attackers and never admit I did it. But he'll know, and he'll stay away from Barbara. Thanks, Flass. You show me what it takes to be a cop in Gotham City, which is such a great moment. You love seeing Flass just get his and Gordon just absolutely win in that moment, because nobody was winning up to this point, and to actually get that moment of goodness is where Jim Gordon finally decides who he's going to be as an officer in Gotham City, and that he actually like decides to go in and be a force for good. Simultaneously, Bruce makes his way back home.
Is in a suicidal funk.
Which, just the setup for this scene fucking takes my breath away. Like, this is one of those moments that it baffles me that Frank Miller is just the shitty writer that he is today, because this is an amazing scene. Bruce Wayne makes his way back home.
He clearly gets it.
Bruce Wayne makes his way back home. He's bleeding out still from the gunshot wound. And we get this great inner monologue about how he'll be dead in like an hour if he lets himself bleed out.
The spell, Alfred will come. You can stop the bleeding in time. Another of your gifts to me, Father.
And
doing it
because to Bruce, he thinks that tonight was just a sign that he can't properly avenge his parents. He doesn't have the tools that he needs. They're not afraid of him. How can he fight crime if they're not afraid of what justice is? How can he make them afraid of him? And that's where we get our flashback to the parent death. Gotta love it. Always love seeing these fuckers get gassed. We cut back and Bruce says that he's still looking for that how he can strike fear into the criminals of Gotham. And then a bat comes crashing into the window. This is potentially symbolic, but it's Frank Miller, so obviously it's meant to be taken literally. Bat flies into a room, lands on this statue of his father, and it's such a stupid line. It's a really, really fucking stupid line. But yes, Father, I shall become a bat is so great. I fucking love it.
It's one of those, it should not work in any context. It should not fucking work, but it does.
It really does. And of course, the last panel is Bruce deciding to ring the bell, and then we pick up with issue number 2. So we open on April 4th. Just catching up with where our characters are. We have a hostage situation. Gordon decides to go in and resolve it himself. I like the one little panel there, a couple pages in, where we see Barbara watching the TV, and just like seeing what Gordon's up to. It's just this great little moment of like Gordon
it's also
knows
that she would have seen him drop his gun, because he goes in and he like before going in, he takes out his gun and just lets it drop.
Which just
it's
great.
Very much like, no, this person is dangerous. This person needs help.
Mm-hmm. Of course, he takes care of the situation. We cut to April 5th. I love the target practice scene where Gordon is just railing on this target with a gun. And I like this inner monologue where he says, "I hate the gun. I hate my job. I keep practicing."
But
Just
I think
again,
I think because you have the point where like this is where Loeb really starts to get annoyed. Like, oh fuck, he's got the press on his side.
yeah. The press loves Gordon. Everyone loves Gordon except the very people that he's working for. Um, just a great like reinforcing that idea of just this necessary evil, and that Gordon does truly believe that he can change it at this point. Let's see. Then we cut to April 6th. Uh, Gordon is with his wife. I love the parallel of Gordon's inner monologue saying in a city without hope, and the next panel is Batman jumping off a rooftop, and we get that amazing silhouette of his cape against the skyline.
For possibly the first time implying that there's going to be hope.
Hmm. Let's see. Then we cut to April 9th. We have our first actual Batman sighting, I guess, or at least one of the first times that he's ever encountered any criminal activity. And at the end of the day, it's just
and,
kids.
and enough criminal activity to alert the police because you have
Hmm.
Jim and Barbara tie it off, and they Superman like in that film. It's like that's a bit self-referential. You don't need to refer like yeah, shared
Yeah,
universe, but
yeah, it's there. Um, yeah, so we have that. I like the little bit where like Bruce very quickly decides that he's not a killer. It's presumably like the first time that he's ever been faced with the decision of just letting someone die on his watch because this kid's about to like fall off the balcony there.
it's like and it helps. It's like this dude's these are kids. Like
Yeah, they're
they're
still they're
they're
still
not.
doing they're still doing illegal things, but they're still kids, and Batman acknowledges this. Also, just a quick note, I love the year one suit. I really love the year one suit. It's just
It's
it's a perfect
good
exercise
design.
in just simplicity. It could just be the best route to go in. And for a suit like this, it really works. You don't even get like a full body shot of the bat suit until way later in issue 2, and
I think it's also
it's
telling that Bruce lets these three kids go, basically.
yeah.
Like, because it's saying, like, no, these are children living in Gotham City.
Hmm. And even like even just like that small moment where like Batman's like holding on to the kid that he's trying to save, and this other kid comes and like hits him in the back of the head. Bruce still decides to let these kids go pretty much after all the horrible shit they're doing here. Um, and he just counts himself lucky that he didn't die there. You know, there's a lot of inner monologue like that throughout the book where he just doesn't think that he should be living through any of this. You know, he could be doing better, and it's a lot of the book is Bruce being very hard on himself and how he's not good enough yet, how he isn't the man he should be yet to avenge his parents. And I really like that idea, and Miller does a great job of getting into Bruce's head like that. I
Yeah.
think then we get one of my favorite panels in like the whole comic. This spread about like halfway down that page where on May 15th with Gordon in front of the artist's interpretations of Batman.
And then you have Flash just to the left in a neck brace with a
love
broken arm.
you love to see it.
It's it's this great comeuppance that like it's also the first sign that yeah the police department's unraveling because oddly people like Gordon.
Hmm. This is also our first meeting with Detective Sarah Essen, who will become a very important character later on in this particular comic, but also even more important later on in the Batman mythos. You didn't know who Sarah Essen was at all before this, right?
No, I didn't.
Mm.
Um,
Because I remember you saying that like, you're like, why do we need this like subplot with like the Gordon and Essen? And I was like, well, probably because Essen is the one that most people probably think of when they hear Jim Gordon's wife. Yeah, it's just just a cool little retrospective thing, I guess. But
it's also I'm gonna be honest. Miller does a I don't think Miller does a good job characterizing her. Like
we get a couple really good scenes later on, I think.
you get flashes, but it's Miller just has a problem in this book and I suppose in other places with just writing the female characters.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So,
Like I
so,
get it,
so
it's not
such as
entirely their story, but like it's also just it's they don't seem to have really lives for themselves. It's all in relation to either Bruce or Gordon or the city itself. There's like
mm,
no real agency.
I
Um,
get, yeah, yeah, but unfortunately, such is the way of Frank Miller. So we then get to May 19th, one of my favorite scenes in the entire comic, which
ooh,
is
yeah.
just Commissioner Loeb casually sitting down with some of Gotham's biggest crime bosses, of course, including Carmine the Roman Falcone, who we've talked about many a time in the first episode of this podcast.
I was
But,
underwhelmed by Falcone's appearance in this comic because
well,
actually having read
his
Long
come
Halloween,
on, his first appearance, you know, because he appears like two times in this, and I think the second time he's done well enough.
yeah,
So
but like
Batman Batman comes in and kills all the power in this at this dinner. Has this amazing speech and like my favorite panel in the whole comic of of this silhouetted smoky image of Batman. Says, "Ladies, gentlemen, you've eaten well. You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit. Your feast is nearly over. From this moment on, none of you are safe." And he extinguishes the fire there at the dinner table. And my God, I love that scene so much.
and he presumably just leaves. He presumably
Yeah,
just leaves because you don't
yeah. It's literally just there as a warning, just to say like, yeah, no, I will get every single one of you.
like and this kind of spirals Loeb out of control into immediately setting up using Detective Essen as bait trying to like try and catch Batman.
Yeah, I like those little like moments where like Bruce is just like waiting in the shadows, knowing like, oh yeah, no, this is just a trap. They're just trying to catch me. Um, Going on to
And
June
then
5th. What is with what is with Miller's obsession in this book with stripping down characters and tying them naked somewhere?
because we'll talk about it when we talk about Selena Kyle a bit more. Because the man is obsessed with BDSM. The man is
but he but he does it to fucking Falcone.
yeah yeah.
I don't get it. Then we got our first look at Harvey Dent in this book, which I think is really cool. It's a really great character to have here. Gordon seems to think that he's somehow involved with Batman, and of course he's absolutely right. Um, Gordon leaves, and we see Batman hiding under Dent's desk. Then I don't know. See, this is one of those moments that I like. This moment between Gordon and Essen. I think it's quite nice. I don't know
and
personally,
and,
but
and Essen has kind of clocked it. Like Essen's worked it out.
yeah, yeah.
Like that's like one of the few good moments that she gets. Like she's worked out who Batman is, even if she then basically gets like,
Well,
no, that's
it's really interesting because this is an idea that isn't played on a lot. Um, People like immediately making the connection between, oh yeah, Bruce Wayne just came back to Gotham, person with a ton of resources and external wealth that he could just use on whatever, and suddenly we have
well as
masked
having the
vigilante
baggage
crime.
of having dead parents who were murdered in front of
Yeah,
him.
hmm yeah, just I think it's just a cool idea that like not a lot of people play on. Get this cool little like couple very minimal dialogue, very minimal inner monologue even, uh, where Batman just saves this homeless person, and I don't know, it's just a cool little moment where Gordon like actually like starts to like sort of see who Batman is. Obviously, isn't on his side yet, but Batman very quickly escapes. He goes into this building. He's shot in the leg, and I love this little chase sequence with the police after Batman. I think it's a great
Well,
little
the
moment.
chase sequence that it leads us into the third issue. It's a
Yeah.
fairly lengthy. This could be the bulk of the story. Um,
hmm This is also one of those scenes, weirdly enough, where at least the resolution of it has been. Oh wait, no, nope. Sorry, hang on. I got it. Oh no, sorry, no. I'm actually confused. Am I confusing it with the other scene or no?
Which other scene?
No, no, because it does go into the next day, right? Like Batman is still like trapped there for the next day, right?
Yeah, it goes right into the next issue. The next issue.
Yeah, yeah. And then um okay, see, this is a cool little moment. The June 7th thing at the beginning of issue 3, with all the cats around Selena, and you have Holly there. It's a nice little moment,
Yeah, but
right? Right? Right, Jacob? Right?
it's nice-ish. It's nice-ish. It's like the closest thing you get to a nice moment.
God damn it. I'm trying to get
Don't,
something here.
he,
Um,
he doesn't need to be here. She doesn't need to be here, Frank. You don't need her.
I mean, I'm into the idea of intrinsically linking the early days of Batman with the early days of Catwoman. Like she should always be there, like early at the start. I rightfully so. A lot of people disagree with his characterization of Selena, and I would agree with that.
Yeah,
So
he makes her a dominatrix. He makes her. It's, it's this weird. Again, it's the weird sex stuff. He includes so much weird sex stuff in this book.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
Moving on.
don't get me wrong. I get it. Comics can have sex, but it's not tastefully done.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the very least, it's not explicit. You know, it
Yeah,
could be worse.
it could be worse. It's still not good, but you have the idea of like let's just bomb these abandoned buildings. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, Clearly, this was meant to be like a cliffhanger to like, ooh, come back next month. Um,
Yeah, yeah, one of those moments that like yeah, everyone's gonna be like clamoring around to buy the next issue. Rightfully so. It's a great moment. I like the one panel there, a couple pages in, with Batman hiding under the steps and the one cat running by.
yeah, and you get such a good you get a good sense for the moments.
It's well, it's very tense, and like you feel that like Bruce doesn't actually know how to get out of this situation right now. Um, I think speaking on the art and colors for a moment, I love the colors in this sequence in particular. Just moving forward with this bit, we had a couple pages past that, and I love the reds that start getting used here. Like when the police actually find him, they start shooting at him. He's running from them. There's this very like deep red going on as the situation escalates.
It's this
Then
great danger. It's this great danger moment, and we have this idea that like it's like right, we just want to murder this man. Um,
oh yeah, but
like
then
we just want him dead.
mhm. And then of course they're still going after him. I love this moment then, which which oddly enough, this is one of the scenes that directly inspires that one scene in Batman Begins where Bruce calls in all the bats to sort of distract everyone. I love this though. Like it's an aspect of the Batman that just like isn't used many places at all. But Miller like does like the literal interpretation of the bat part of the Batman. It's like all those. I love the images of those bats swarming around everyone, around the police, around just regular civilians. It's a really cool image. Um, I'm curious, what did you make of that?
I actually really liked all of this sequence.
Mm.
And it's not one you really can talk about like an individual panel because it's really good at flowing, um,
Hmm.
especially
And
after
it's
the
very
cliffhanger.
and it's very has very minimal dialogue and even inner monologue, which the book is heavy on. Yeah, a lot of the book is minimal dialogue, but the inner monologue makes up the bulk of this, and there's not
Inner
even a lot of
monologue,
that
man, like this is like
sequence.
Frank Miller's doing stereotypical noir dialogue. Um,
Hmm. It works. It really works, I think.
and I love the implication that before Bruce makes his move, these police officers are so on edge they could just start shooting each other at like the slightest provocation. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
like they're going at like there's just like a stray cat. There's also the so we kill a few homeless people. Um, it's It's let's actually shine a light on that corruption. It's why it's part of the reason, like, you have that enough corruption here. You don't necessarily need to add the child prostitute, Frank. You don't need it. I'm not letting you go.
I'm not asking you to let it go because it doesn't need to be there. But like, yeah, whatever. Moving on. We get past that sequence. We get to June 9th. We get these.
One final thing about that sequence, especially the bats. I love the use of the yellow and sort of like the blocking out the sun idea.
It's gorgeous.
And covering his escape, and then doing that nice one-page montage of Gordon essentially trying to pick up the pieces before moving to
Yeah. And we get another nice little scene of between him and Essen. We see Gordon start to think of her in a different light, I should say. Which ends on the following page, and with him saying, "Think of her as a cop. Think of her as a cop," because that strictly like professional relationship is starting to break, and you do feel that. I don't know. I found the affair.
My issue with the affair is that it is actually something that happened in issue 2, is that it doesn't start out as a professional relationship. Like,
did you say it doesn't start out as a professional relationship?
It doesn't start out as just professional. Gordon's already slipping. First time they're sharing the car, and then she actually has any sort of the first time she has any dialogue. Like, she's there in the background at the very beginning of issue 2. She doesn't say anything. Like,
Yeah. But I think also if you could also look a bit further into that and say that Gordon had already sort of like from the very beginning of him meeting her had already sort of taken a liking to her, and it wasn't as gradual a buildup as one might think, but it was more him like fighting with himself internally. Like he was always attracted to her, but never really like wanted to think that way, and that's what a lot of his inner monologue about her is about him fighting that feeling. And I think it works, honestly. I don't see any issue with it at all.
But then you have June 15th, where I think this is at the point where Miller shows how much he gets Batman.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy because Frank Miller.
Again, kind of crazy for what he does in the future. Like,
yeah.
It's this whole idea that I don't like, that Batman is a loner, because he's not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You get those nice couple lines at the end of that scene where he says, "I need an ally, an inside man. I need Jim Gordon on my side." And that's
Jim Gordon, because Jim Gordon is like the one dude you can actually trust to make a difference in the city, because he's already doing it.
The one person that actually wants to make a difference in the city, and we get that first little hint of the idea that Bruce does want more people around him. You know, we see this throughout this whole comic. I think we see Bruce develop a lot as a character. You know, we sort of, you know, the character that Bruce should be at the beginning of his career as Batman. Just a very angry young man that isn't quite sure what he actually wants, and then eventually deciding that he can't do it alone, that he needs people around him. This doesn't just mean Jim Gordon and eventually the rest of the Gotham Police Department, but eventually extending into
this is going to evolve into the Bat. This is eventually going to evolve into the Bat family.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. You have first 3 panels of June 17th.
Okay, come on, give it that at least. Selena punches the fucking pimp. Come on.
I mean, he deserves it. Good for her. It's also just.
You are hilarious. we then we see another scene between Gordon and Essen. They eventually
This is the one point where I think Miller gets the relationship to work. Yeah, this is where
I'm curious. I'm curious. What makes this scene different from the others?
um, I think it might just be it might just be because it's completely dialogue free. It's
Okay.
more in the art itself. Um, it's these two it's two people very much coming together and finding something in each other. Um,
Mm,
and then of course it
yeah.
later gets used as blackmail. And then you get Selena Kyle as Catwoman.
Actually, as
Um,
Catwoman.
actually as Catwoman. And
Okay. The suit is
it's
good. I'll give
trying
it
to
that.
parallel the suit is good, but it's trying to parallel with Gordon for some reason. Like
I'm not sure if that's exactly what it's going for. I think
just
it's
the
just a
way that
scene
it
that happens.
flows.
I think it's just something that happens to be happening at the same time. I don't think it's meant to parallel Gordon.
Okay, it's weird placing. I mean, they do at least split up the skyline panels before Gordon's narration starts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the point of that is just to say that like it would be a pretty weird point to leave Selena just at punching the pimp and saying we're gonna find a new line of work, and then just totally stopping at that for the rest of the issue. So it's just that little flash of like, hey, she's gonna get a Catwoman costume and she's gonna go out and do the Catwoman thing. So
I think that's the thing that kind of maybe waited for the fourth issue, possibly. I think
mm,
they could have waited for the fourth issue because
I
uh,
suppose. I suppose.
and then you have Gordon contemplative. Um,
Another one of my favorite panels from the comic. I fucking love that shot of him sitting on the bed with the gun with his wife behind him.
yeah,
It's a striking image in the issue on. I love that.
it's very striking. Um, and it's a very good parallel, and I love the way that it's just black background. Um,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah. It
you
looks
don't get um, and you sort of really get this idea of um, Gordon being like Gordon coming around to the idea that maybe this lunatic in a bat costume might just be worth 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 saving the city and
mhm.
worth working with. Um,
Yeah. Then we kick off issue 4, which first off has my favorite cover of all four of the covers. I fucking love that one.
yeah.
With
Can we agree?
Clark
Issue
facing
three
off.
has the weakest cover.
Yeah. It's just kind of there.
It just like it fits thematically so well, and then you have issue
Yeah.
three.
It's just, it's just
Honestly, that could have just been like the next page from issue two if issue two had another page.
it really could have.
Like,
Really could have.
like if
So
you want to build up Catwoman, like give her the cover image. That might have
yeah,
helped
yeah.
somewhat.
Actually, I'm surprised they didn't play on that at all. That's weird.
Yeah, no, like the issue three cover is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So we open up issue 4. The Gordon SN affair is in full swing. Uh, we get this. Okay, I actually no. I want to hear your play-by-play of this scene with Batman here, and the guy snorting coke.
Oh yeah. So okay, so they established early on the other page that this is that uh and they also it's really nice again Dent shows up again for one panel for one panel basically like they and it's this actually we haven't mentioned it but I love the way like the media has been like the television screens have occasionally been filling
Ooh,
in
That you are gonna love Dark Knight Returns then. Dark Knight Returns does that constantly.
I was gonna say it could easily be overused.
God damn it!
Easily be overused, but there's enough restraint here, in that each is it helps. But I will say it helps move a story that's taking place over a year along very nicely.
Yeah.
And you have this great moment. You have Dent and Gordon working together, and you have September 11th. So you have this criminal he's going to testify, and again you have Miller very aware in the script about the injustices of the American legal system.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I like that one little line that his attorney, I'm assuming, that she has saying like, where do I start? Bad enough that you're black. I want you in a blue suit at the inquest with a tie. Make it black. Same for the shoes. None of that pimp stuff. It's a really interesting insight into like specifically how the justice system would have been. Still, honestly, still is.
still
And
is.
it's weird. It's really fucking weird, given a lot of Frank Miller's work.
Did he have a ghostwriter?
I don't think so. I really don't.
Or did he get on drugs or something in between this and All-Star Batman and Robin?
Actually, before this would have been before that like the next big Batman project after this was Dark Knight Strikes Again.
Okay.
So
well, I've heard that was also bad, but I
it's very bad. Yes, yeah. So anyway, what is this one panel where Batman's fucking like on top of the dealer and fucking like with the red eyes there.
He's supposed to be coked out of his mind because like it gives you bloodshot eyes.
Yeah, but it just looks really funny to me.
But instead of it's one of the it's actually one of the there's some of like the more exaggerated bits of the artwork that I don't think actually works, like bloodshot circle eyes.
Yeah, just looks kind of stupid. Let's see, cutting forward to September 12th, September 13th. A lot of infighting in the.
Again, you have this great this great scene with Loeb. I love Gordon's little dig. I know exactly what I promised, Commissioner. You get my best work.
Yep. This is also the same scene that Loeb reveals that he has dirt on Gordon because he has photos of Gordon and Essen together that he could just like give to Gordon's wife whenever, which is a great bit of leverage, but also I love the way that pays off later. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But in the meantime, Gordon wants to go meet Bruce Wayne, who he strongly suspects at this point is Batman. Barbara happens to be with him. She comes along, and I adore this scene. I hate that like most iterations of Batman don't play up this side of Bruce. That will just be a complete dick for the sake of just hiding his secret.
He's being. I think especially for stuff pre any of the Robins. I think post the Robins.
Well, yeah, it's a little harder when he has to play up the public side of I have an adopted son, but but like in these moments, because they adapt this sort of into Batman Begins as well, in like the scenes where he's like with the two models at the restaurant, or where he's like where he like flips on all the party guests. You sort of like get the same personality here, where he just has his girl.
He's being a dick, but he's being such a calculated dick.
Oh yeah. And it does exactly what he wants it to. It scares Gordon off, and then Gordon's it sends him off the trail, which I like. I like that that plotline wasn't just waved away in a no, he's probably not actually Batman. No, like Bruce gave him a good reason to no longer suspect him.
And it's the perfect amount of theater, and like I love the reveal immediately after. I love the way Alfred describes it. Positively vaudevillian, sir. I gather the remaining bottle of club soda may be left in its proper container.
Yeah, actually, I really like the.
You also get like the one bit of characterization of Alfred is like, "My God, my son is insane."
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I can't call my child on this because he's an adult.
I love it. I do like the one bit that they added in the animated film where the girl like like is sort of like, you guys are the weirdest like fucking guys that I've ever met. She's like, what are you doing? And Bruce like Bruce is like, it's the easiest $5,000 you ever made.
Which is like fair. It's a good thing. It's a shame they kind of left they didn't give an explanation here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we could assume that that's what happened. Either that or he did just grab any random girl at like some sort of at some sort of party that didn't actually speak English or anything, that would just like go along with it.
Yeah. Um,
So then Gordon decides to come clean about the affair to Barbara,
well,
which I like that we don't.
no. First, you have the pressure being put on Flass, uh, where he's like, yeah, he basically always says, "We're gonna murder this drug dealer, so he won't
Gordon, no, no,
testify."
no, no. Gordon comes clean before then.
Oh, right, because they're
Yeah, yeah,
they're still
yeah.
in the
Right at the
car.
top of the same page. Yeah, yeah. I like that we don't actually see the argument, because it's a really interesting way like, because we cut right back to Bruce then just like watching them waiting in his driveway before they leave. I think it's a cool little scene. Yeah. So then
And it does kind of throw Bruce just a little bit, like, why are they waiting?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So then the Loeb and his men decide to like use their dirt against Gordon. I love that one panel on October 5th where Barbara says like, "Yes, sir, I know about Sergeant Essen. Please don't bother me again." I fucking love that bit. We
And
cut
like
forward a couple days. Oh,
they
sorry. Go
they
ahead.
try to they try to kill him off. He's fine.
Hmm.
And then on October 12th, James Gordon Jr. is born.
Love it. I like
Um,
it's a small moment. Like the payoff here is small, but I like that we've sort of like been building up to this for a lot of the comic, and just a great little moment.
and
So
then
we
you
can,
get one of the few points where Selena Kyle feels closer to the cat burglar version of herself.
mm,
Um, Mainly, yeah, like they
well, it's then like with it's her and Holly like with the stuffed toys um and like what
is
was
that supposed to be stuffed toys? Is it just stuffed toys?
I think it is, yeah, because they thought that there was something like hidden inside them, yeah.
Yeah. Who do who do they steal from? Does it ever say?
Do they say? I don't think they actually say.
I think in the film
Oh, no, no,
adaptation.
okay. No, the news report says Commissioner Loeb's private collection of pop memorabilia is valued at $40,000.
So they steal from the commissioner, and it turns out he's just a
Yeah,
nerd. He's just a big
yeah,
Disney nerd. Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to think of a
There's
way
a little fucking like Donald Duck thing there.
there's Donald Duck right there. Um,
Yeah, love on the next page that one shot of Batman on the glider.
and it's the first time you start seeing Bruce starting to use Wayne Enterprises to like make
Yeah,
shit for him.
hmm
Like you
uh,
have the news report
we
of
go after.
industry
He's
was
going
won
after.
by the demonstration of unheard possibilities for lightweight, durable plastics. Immediately, Bat Glider.
Yeah.
And then you get
So
the actual characterization of Carmine Falcone.
okay, so as someone who adored every little thing about the Long Halloween, did you like this scene at the very least with him and Johnny?
Yes.
Okay, thank.
This is the closest he got to that characterization. And
Mm.
I like the scene
Well, it's also where
especially
we.
here. Like
It's also
this is the
it's
point
where
where
we
he
get the
feels yeah.
it's where we get the origin of the three the scars on his face in Long Halloween.
Yeah. He gets
Yeah.
I love that it's a Roman bath.
Yeah, yeah.
Terrible pun. It's a terrible pun. But
I
I
love it.
love it.
So let's see, cutting forward a bit. Carmine is in the hospital. The police decide to take drastic measures in order to finally get to Gordon, and they fucking kidnap his child.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Uh,
we're
which, wait a second, I hadn't clocked this. Is this vaguely did this seem like vaguely inspired The Dark Knight?
yeah, I'd say it probably did.
At the very least, the situation of Gordon's family being taken hostage.
Yeah.
Man, it is insane how Nolan just looked at this and Long Halloween and was like, yeah, that these are going to be my movies.
Pretty much, and then whatever he did with Dark Knight Returns.
I mean, Dark Knight Rises was mostly
Rise,
the one plot
I always
was
make that mistake, and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
the one plot in it was based on No Man's Land, but mostly just in the idea of Gotham being cordoned off from the rest of the world. Let's see. So, I like this little sequence here, though. We oddly enough, the climax of the comic does not feature Batman. I mean, it's Bruce Wayne, but it's not Batman, which I think is a really interesting thing to do, like for the ending of your Batman book.
It's also interesting. I think there's a little bit of ambiguity in the ending of does Gordon realize it's Bruce Wayne?
I think it's interesting because I had always taken the ending to be Gordon is actually like practically blind in that moment, and he doesn't actually he thinks it's obviously he knows it's the guy that is Batman, but he doesn't actually see his face and he doesn't see who he is. But rewatching the animated film, they sort of play it like Gordon does clearly see Bruce.
Yeah, I mean, they imply it, and then you have the last
Yeah.
page, which is the best page of the comic.
Like it's well, I just want to comment on that. Like obviously, like for the rest of the Batman mythos, like Gordon can't actually know that Bruce is Batman, but there is that almost slight implication there that he does know.
Or that he's smart enough to work it out and he never says it, which is
Mm.
possible. But I love the last page because it's
Oh, the
finishing
last
putting
page
the
is perfect.
pieces. It's finishing putting the pieces in place. Um, uh, you have Loeb getting ousted as commissioner. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you and you have this great rooftop scene um, uh, that ends with this great line. As for me, well, there's a real panic on. Somebody's threatened to poison the Gotham Reservoir. Calls himself the Joker. I've got a friend coming who might be able to help. Should be here any minute. Kind of ending
And
the comic with like, yeah, this entire thing wasn't a Batman story. This was about Jim Gordon.
yeah, and overcoming that corruption, and I think it's a really great way to cap off the story. In the end, I gotta ask, did you like year one?
Yes, I did, despite Selena Kyle and Frank Miller's inability to write a female character. Um,
Does your version? I imagine it would. Does your version come with that afterword by Frank Miller?
yes, it does. Um,
Isn't that amazing?
yeah,
Like I fell in love with that when I first read it, and I still come back to it often.
it's also perplexing just because he gets it. Like,
Yeah, he really like give him all the shit you want. Frank Miller understands Batman. At the very least, he understands the character.
or at least he did at one point.
Yeah, and had a very firm grasp on it.
Like, I don't
Yeah,
regret buying this book. It's
yeah.
it may be a book that I read again. It's not perfect. It has a lot of problems.
But there are a lot of things to really like in it, I think.
Yeah, I also agree with you. Yeah, no, this shouldn't be someone's first Batman comic.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see it on a lot of like, oh yeah, beginner Batman comics lists, but like, I don't know. I don't quite agree with that. It's there, but like, if you're looking for like an early days Batman story, I'd probably sooner recommend the Scott Snyder story 0 Year, but that's just me. And we'll probably do that eventually, but it's a different take on the early days of Batman.
Well, yeah, well, it's I think part of it is it's definitely a Batman comic for beginners, but it should not be the first. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Like I would at least do like some shorter stories first. I mean I really do stand by these first 3 episodes being some really good beginner Batman stories. Long Halloween. As long as you have a vague grasp on who a fair amount of Batman characters are, you'll be fine going into Long Halloween with no
most of the
context.
characters are the one in Long Halloween that you need to have a grasp for are the ones who appeared in films. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
the only
Um,
two that I really didn't know going in was
was
Brendan and
was
Mad
Mad
Hatter.
Hatter. I fucking loved just I don't know. I can't get over that. I love that like you're just like I had no clue who this guy was. Just very funny to me. But yeah, so like that, like Killing Joke should definitely be one of your early Batman stories. Same with this one, I really don't think it should be your first, but it's up there, definitely. That being said, we did watch the animated film as well, to prep for this. It's a great adaptation. It's very straight.
It is straight. A lot of the I will say it's actually a smart adaptation in that it takes a lot of the internal monologue, either cuts it, um, and does more with the facial expressions to make up for that, or
Mhm.
converts it into dialogue.
Yeah, yeah. And even though there's still like a fair amount of inner monologue, but like they cut it from like the scenes where like it makes no sense to have it. Like we could read a comic and watch Batman fight a couple guys and have his thought process as he's fighting them. But if you have that in a film, it just doesn't work. So they have that whole sequence where he's fighting the 3 kids and he saves the one from the ledge and all that. We have that, and then they throw some inner monologue at the end of the fight when he's all worn out. So it's a really smart adaptation. There's a great cast. Bryan Cranston is too damn good for Jim Gordon. He's so fucking good for the role.
Eliza Dushku as Selena Kyle actually elevates the material.
Yes. And hey, Katie Sackhoff plays Sarah Essen, which is awesome because I love Katie Sackhoff. I don't know if you know her from anything.
I don't really know. I don't recognize the name. Do you
I
know
mostly know her from.
have you seen
Have you seen what?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
I have not seen it. No, I haven't. I
Okay,
don't.
that's why you wouldn't know Eliza Dushku because that's the big thing that she's from, and
I know the name. I don't think I've ever like seen her in anything besides this.
she
I,
plays sort
I,
of an anti-hero slash a villain in Buffy. Um,
okay, so Catwoman.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little darker than Catwoman.
Well, okay. Well, well, I mean, there is darker Catwoman. Have you seen Batman Returns? Which I also did rewatch recently, and wow, that film is dark, but I love it.
I didn't rewatch it recently, but yeah, we watched that. It's a great cast. I think it's the one of the 3 animated movies we've covered on this podcast. It's the one that like closest to what's on the
It,
page.
oh yeah, definitely. It's
And
also
I
telling that it's the
and
short.
I
It's the short. It's the shortest of those animated films. It's only an hour and 4 minutes. Like it is just the content of the comic, and that's it. Like it's great.
what I think works. But I think like if you were going to do that to any of the 3 stories that we actually covered, um, your one's probably the one to actually do it for. Um,
Yeah,
because the other 2
yeah.
we covered, you need to make a certain amount of changes just
I
to make
I
the
don't
flow
I don't
better.
think I don't think you need to change Long Halloween. I really don't, in my opinion. But
There's some stuff that we've obviously we've talked about.
mm.
Yeah,
You also asked if year one directly influenced any Batman films, and of course I responded with Batman Begins because there are just some scenes from year one that are directly translated to Batman Begins, right down to the very ending of them teasing the Joker on the rooftop with Gordon and Batman. I think that's great.
I think it's the same stuff. There's also the Roman is such an interesting character in Batman Begins. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I think it does a good job of adapting Scarecrow into more the mob boss style of that film is
Mhm.
going for, and not doing over
And
the
I
top
do,
supervillains.
and
Um,
I do love Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul.
Liam, I forgot he was Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, yeah. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. Oh,
I think I
and of
prefer
course, Of
Killian
course,
Murphy.
Gary Oldman remains like one of the best things about probably the best thing about the Nolan trilogy.
Oh, most definitely. But yeah, Killian Murphy as Scarecrow, I love. Um,
Oh
he
yeah, he's brilliant.
he has that presence where you're like
Yeah,
something's off
he's
about you.
he's just the right amount of unsettling. Yeah, it's great. What else? What else? What else?
It takes the idea of asshole Bruce Wayne, um, and calculated asshole Bruce Wayne.
mhm.
Um, an interesting change though is that Loeb is not a piece of shit in that film.
Yeah, but they just still have Flash in there, and Flash I don't think he's a character typically translated into like Batman media outside of year one. So it's interesting to see him there.
Yeah, and they kept his assholery.
As they should, as they should. Yeah, just a good film though, honestly. And I will fight. It is the Dark Knight Return. Sorry, the Dark Knight is still better. Honestly, come on.
I think I slightly prefer Batman Begins. I genuinely think
Oh,
I do.
come on, come on.
Yeah, I think I think I prefer it. Um, but also very good at. I also say both it and Dark Knight are both really good at thematically adapting like the themes of year one.
Yeah,
Of like
definitely.
why, because a lot of year one, like thematically, this is all about why Batman needs other people. It's why
Yeah.
we're not focusing on Batman as much.
hmm
Um,
Which is why, hot take, I think Rachel is a great character included for the trilogy.
I think Rachel's amazing in Batman Begins, at least. Um,
I still like her in Dark Knight in the Dark Knight
she's great
too.
in Dark Knight. Um, I think it's kind of
I mean,
shame that she.
obviously, I think Katie Holmes is the better actor. But I mean,
Yeah, like
it's
I don't hate Maggie Gyllenhaal, but I think it brings more depth to the role.
yeah, I agree. But that being said, also Maggie Gyllenhaal is paired up with Aaron Eckhart for most of the film, so
Yeah,
so she may be upstaged occasionally.
that's true. Uh,
Yeah. Anyway, I guess that about covers all of our year one related
yeah,
things.
it's a shorter. It's I'm not surprised this is a slightly shorter episode, at least than last time.
Jacob, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is like on par with a long Halloween episode.
It's a little shorter by like a couple minutes.
By okay, as of right now, it's 4 minutes shorter, and we still got to do outro shit.
That's true.
Anyway, so let's do outro shit. So I guess first thing you want to know is what we're reading next time, right, Jacob?
Yes, yeah. Tell me.
So the only thing you knew going into before this was that you knew that episode 4 you would need two books for,
Yes.
because we are covering up a slightly larger story, but it is still like two smaller volumes. So any predictions before I tell you what it is?
Not really. Not
Okay.
really.
Next time on Fresh Faced Comics, we'll be reading The Court of Owls.
We're start. Oh,
Yes.
ooh, you made me
Yeah.
very excited.
Yes. This is actually gonna be our first ongoing series that we'll be covering on Fresh Faced Comics. But as far as like ongoing series go for the channel, we'll be doing like they won't like all come in a row. We're not gonna do like all of Scott Snyder's Batman for the next couple episodes. It's gonna be like Court of Owls, a fair amount of time will pass, then we'll do the next arc and things like that. So we will be going further with it in the future, but for now we're doing Court of Owls. We will be doing both volumes, Court of Owls and City of Owls, this covering issues 1 to 12 of the New 52 Batman, plus Batman Annual number 1. There is a DC Essentials edition that has just the main Court of Owls story, which is issues 1 through 11, but I will argue to my last breath that you do need issues 12 and the annual. So we're going to be doing the two volumes. I will leave links to both of those in the description on the YouTube channel. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or Anchor, you could go to the YouTube channel, Blood Donut Studios, and links to those books will be right in the description there if you want to follow along with what we're reading. What else? What else? What else? I think that about covers it, right? Anything
I think
else?
so. Uh,
Awesome.
Give us the
Okay.
outro.
All right. Give us an outro. Here is the outro. No. Thank you all so much for watching/listening. Thank you all so much for supporting the podcast. It really does mean a lot. Thank you all for supporting Blood Donut Studios. Means the world to us. Continue to listen and share around with all your friends, whatever you whatever you feel comfortable with sharing around on. Any support is appreciated, even if you're not personally interested in certain stories that we're doing. Maybe other people will be. If you want to share them around in whatever groups that you can, it would be greatly appreciated. So once again, thank you all so much for watching/listening. I gotta remember to keep saying listening now that we're on not just YouTube.
Spotify.
Yes, outro on Spotify. Yes, yeah, on Spotify and Anchor. You can listen on there too. I don't know anyone that uses Anchor like as like just a like as their main podcast listening thing. I've
It's like a feed. Some people use it as like a feed. I have a friend who
yeah,
uses it.
yeah. I mean, yeah, the feed makes sense, but I don't know. Anyway, guess what does it. Thank you all so much for watching/listening. Until next time, this has been Joey Morgan.
And Jacob Licklider.
You'll get there eventually. Goodbye. Hello and welcome to Fresh Faced Comics, the comic book podcast where a lot. Fuck me, god damn it. Let me try it again. All right. Hello and welcome to Fresh Faced Comics, the I cannot fucking speak today. Let me try that one more time. All right. Hello and welcome to Fresh Faced Comics, the comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader gives guides.
You
I swear.
Do you want me to read it?
No, I got it. Fuck you. I can get. If I don't get it this time, you can do it.